Welcome back everybody. It is round 4, the last round of Swiss, and we are playing against Florent, who is a good friend of mine. We know each other since 15 years now, and he decided to play Vayu Turbo for this event. This match really was a nail-biter because it decided which one of us had the chance to get into top 4. At the time, both of us had a standing of 2 and 1, so we really tried to focus here. My start was very good. I had the Prisma set up with the Necroshade, also the Future Fusion, dumping 2 more names, so my grave was live, and at any time I could have summoned a big beater with the Miracle Fusion. He doesn't do anything here. I also just pass because I don't want to play into his back row. Next turn I get my F-Zero from the Future Fusion. Now again he doesn't have any response, and I will summon Stratos and declare the effect to destroy non-target. At this point I just attack with both, dealing some damage. The said monster was a Vayu, which also set up his grave. Now the MST does out the Absolute Zero, and on the attack of Gale I dropped my Tragodia, which was at 3000 attack at this point. I didn't have to summon anything, just attack with the Tragodia, continuing dealing damage to him. I decided if I want to set a card, so Tragodia goes down to 2400. He really didn't have a great start into the game, so he was thinking very hard, as you can see, and he had to make a hard choice how he could win this one, because my Tragodia put him on the clock. So he used Heavy Storm on his 2 back rows, which were Oppression and the Solemn, but both of those cards couldn't deal with the track on the field, and so he had to rely on his Gors, which he had in hand obviously. And I was thinking how I could pressure him without playing into the Gors, and I did find a play. I used Miracle Fusion for the F-Zero, and then using the D-Fusion, clearing the Gors and dealing the final damage. So it is 1-0 for the hero deck, and we're going into game 2. Florent again is going first, and again starting with the T set. Up until now it is very similar to the last game. Here I use the King of the Swamp, which is always nice to have early in rotation, so you don't have to rely on getting it later. And with the E-Call, again I will get the Prisma, so he does know the deck. I showed the Dark Bride from the Extra deck, and he chose to banish my Prisma, protecting his set monster. At this point I didn't think that there is a Raikou that he wanted to protect, so this really influenced my place here. But there's also the fact that he didn't flip up his monster, so it isn't a Vayu either. Now I'm going for the E-Call for the Stratos into Blade Edge, so with this setup of Necroshade and Blade Edge I can summon 2600 beater at any time, and I'm attacking the Vayu, dealing some damage, and this set monster in fact was a Raikou, but he held it for some back row removal, and it is always nice to see when the opponent mills the brain control, because this card is so scary. When I set up my Absolute Zero and other beaters on the field, the brain control is always a very strong option to deal with my board. And here I'm just going in for massive damage. And he reveals his set card is in fact the Oppression, putting him down to just 2000 life points, which means he has only 2 more rounds of Oppression. And here I did misplay. I should have put the Blade Edge into defense position, because even though Stratos would not have killed, he would have put him down to just 200 life points. So the Oppression would have been offline, but like this I just wasted 2 strong bodies on the board running into the Mirror Force. And now I'm just summoning the King of the Swamp to deal damage. Now him being down to 1500, he can only use his Oppression once. And my thought process here was that he must have had a really slow hand, so I tried to attack with my King of the Swamp multiple times to bring him down below 800 life. Now he's sitting at 1000, still 1 time usage of Royal Oppression left. And he top decked the Scirocco, which was very lucky for him. Now he does have board presence back. And I am just using the Miracle Fusion here. So I believe at this point I did have 3 Miracle Fusions in hand and just tried to bait some of his back row, thinking that if there is only 1 real back row I can push through with all 3 Miracle Fusions. Now using the second one, and he chose to use his Oppression on this one, so he's down to 200 life. And I'm thinking if I want to use my 3rd Miracle Fusion now, or if I want to wait for him to build up a board, because I saw him having his Vayu life in the graveyard. I didn't want to play into the back row and leaving an open field, so here he uses the Vayu, going for the Armed Wing and attacking for some damage. Now I'm on a 2-turn clock with this board. And I don't have any other choice but to use the Miracle Fusion now. So even with the Armed Wing on the field, Absolute Zero would be lethal damage, but he shows that he does have the Torrential Tribute on the field. Now using the Heavy Storm to clear my back row. And at this point he noticed that he did forget to use the Vayu Engrave, and because it still was a friendly tournament and a friendly match, we decided to let him summon the Armor Master and still attack. In my turn I used the Nobleman of Crossout on the Raikou, so I got rid of all his remaining copies. Setting 2 cards, just hoping to survive, for him to make any mistake, but he just attacked and it was just game. I guess the top deck Scirocco was really lucky for him, so yeah, we're going into game 3 and I can finally start this time, but I didn't draw an opener, so I just passed to him. And again he does the T-set. and I used the Nobleman of Extermination, and I was so happy to hit the Deep Prison, hoping that he banishes all of them, but he sided out 2 copies of it, so I just used basically an MST on his back row. Again, I do have my polymerization start, and I hard fuse into the Plasma Vice. Not sure if it is the correct play, but my thought process was that I want to deal damage to him before he can set up his oppression, and so I can take away some of his uses, and I dealt a good chunk of damage to him with the piercing damage of the Plasma Vice. And now again I got the Tragodia in hand. Currently sitting at 1800 attack points, but with the fusion recovery I can increase my hand size by 1. But he mirror forces my Tragodia, so I just pass to him. And my grave setup is quite alright. I do have the Sparkman and the King of the Swamp in the grave, so my Miracle Fusions can always put out massive bodies. Nope, I was lying. The Sparkman I added to hand. He does respect it and uses the Bottomless, and here comes the knock. Again banishing his copies of Raikou in the deck. But I don't have any other play this round, so he just tribute summons for the Shiroko and dealing more damage to me. Okay, searching for the Stratos, and he is thinking whether he wants to respond to the summon. He does not, and I get to search for my Ocean. Now, using the polymerization, I added back from the graveyard, trying to fuse into the F-Zero, but again, he does have the oppression, so at this point it is the 3rd oppression he had, and I did have to use the Soul Release, so he cannot use his Vayu in the graveyard, and I can buy some time, but he can just mill another one here. And I get to my Ocean, again trying to relieve some pressure by running over the Armageddonite, but he just has a bottomless trap hole. I got the Mirror Force, which was very strong at this point, also having the bottomless trap hole to deal with the Armed Wing. And then we are basically in top deck mode. I drew the E-Call, but he top decks the Shiroko. Now it's just trying to survive. He decided to attack with the Shiroko, which brought me down to 300, and also summoning the Pachi, but I didn't draw an out of this board, so good games, and it was a deserved win for him. And so this was the end of my tournament run. I was 2-2 at the end, but I still recorded the games of top 4 and the finals. I will also upload those in the upcoming days. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Have an amazing day. Stay tuned. Bye bye.